Our natural tendency, we're humble Canadians here, our natural tendency is to make a statement rather than ask a question. When it comes to dealing with when you're asking for referrals, most of us will turn it into a statement rather than a question. But if they'll answer yes to a question, then they are more likely then to follow through. That's all. They're more likely to follow through. So, well, how many people have here? It's a cute little one. How many people have teenagers? Who was a teenager and an irritating one? There she is, right there. One thing about teenagers is parents want their teenagers to come home at a reasonable hour. Is that fair? So let's say you want your teenager to come home at midnight. What do most parents say to their teenagers now if they want them home at midnight when they're going out? What do most parents say? Be home at midnight. Sometimes you can do a management course and you say, or else. Which is pretty powerful, isn't it? Or else. We love that. And what does a teenager do? They mumble. They do not answer that question. Even teenagers know that if they make a promise, they might have to keep it, so they don't answer. And away they go, and who knows what time they're going to come home because they made no commitment. So what could you do now if you want your teenager home at midnight? What could you say to your teenager now?
Will you be home by midnight?
Will you be home by midnight? And what's the teenager going to say?
Yes.
No. You got to be kidding. No. And you're going to say to yourself, a moment of opportunity. I know what to do now. What are you going to do now? You're going to make a concession. That's right. This is all about power of persuasion. You are going to make a concession. So what could you say to your teenager now? What time will you be home? How do you like that one? And I would say, Saturday. What did she do? She gave up everything, right? No longer did she want me home at midnight. It just gave it up. Well, what time do you want to be home? No. You still want me home at midnight. So you don't want to give the whole thing away. You want to that's a gigantic concession. What's another concession you might make?
Say, do you want to be home at 11:30 or midnight?
Do you want to be home? So what I'm going to suggest is, use Connie's little girl guide thing. Well, if you can't be home by midnight, will you be home by 11:30? And here's what they'll say. All right, all right, all right. They know what you're doing. They know what you're doing. All right, all right, all right. I'll be home by midnight. And they'll be home by midnight more than they are now, but they do lose their phone. Battery goes dead, watch falls, like who knows what happens to them, but they'll be home at midnight more than they are now because they made a promise. And part of teaching your kids to grow up is to teach them a little bit about how to make commitments and keep them, right? This isn't about, like some people say, well, if you're not home by midnight, you'll be sleeping on the front yard. The kid's 12-year-old girl. Yep, sleep in the front yard. We're not going to, those idle threats never work for anyone. So what I'm going to suggest is that's a simple little process to try. Now let's look at your work life.